What makes it the hardest though? I mean, I don't really think it's the home itself, but like what makes it hard to sell a certain home in particular for you?
If the seller isn't realistic about the home itself. Okay, here's what I mean. So I'll give a couple examples. There's one home that was in a really great location, great side of South Salem. It was a large custom home. It was gorgeous, and it was good, square footage and everything. But there were a few things about it that made this home, like the sellers wanted to look at other homes that were similar and price it the same or even just a little lower, but they really didn't take into account. There were a couple things about this home that were turning off almost all the buyers for it at the time. Keep in mind the market was different at this time, but there was no yard for that big, beautiful, massive home. And it wasn't just a flag lot. It was like worse than a flag lot because there was no parking, like driving. It was a super narrow little to get to it. Like it was rough.
So
Location. Yes. And so the sellers just they needed to, just looking at the home, you'd think, oh my goodness, this should be priced like very high because it was beautiful and all these things and they had built it and customized it and all this. But they needed to realize that because of those other factors, that really takes down like so much of the price, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that is an unfortunate thing, but that's so true though. Sellers, in a sense, always think their home is worth more than what we think it's valued at.
Yeah.
Which I get. I'm personally invested in my home I currently live in. I've done updates to it. I've lived here for years. You don't understand all the money that I've spent into this home. And all the while, remember this, all the money you spend into a home, keep your receipts, keep the bills, because that is a tax write-off when you go and sell the home. You can write all that off at escrow. So that's a little quick tip for you.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with particular homes that are like super, super nice, but for whatever reason, they just have become out of place. Usually it's location, no parking, bad ingress, egress, and then some way or another, the functionality of the home is just messy, and it's hard to function, regularly because it's got a kirk to it. And
or
that's a turnoff.
Or if it's just super unfitting, like it's just this, we've definitely seen this before where it's this like beautiful, like newer, awesome, great home. And then right around it, there were homes that just aren't taken care of. They're way older. Like it just doesn't fit. And that definitely hurts the value. Yeah. Another one that comes to mind is a home. I thought it was a very cool home. It was in West Salem, and it was a 0 lot line home. Do you remember that listing?
That thing was beautiful.
Oh my goodness. It was so cool.
I walked in, did an open house, and it was awesome.
It was like straight up and down, but it had just all these like funky quirks to it. It was very like contemporary style. It was super cool. But because it was so unique, and because it was a 0 lot line home, which means there's a shared wall, and a lot of people, it's not quite what they're looking for. Yeah. It was a little bit harder to sell. And the sellers, again, were wanting to look at comps that were not 0 lot line homes because it was a big, beautiful home. It just, so that's tough when, to you, maybe as the seller, because I understand as a seller, maybe it's not a big deal at all to you. You don't even realize there's a shared wall because, I've lived in homes with shared wall. It wasn't even a thing. We didn't care at all. But to buyers that haven't, aren't looking for that, it's a much bigger deal.
Totally. One thing that sticks out in my mind when it comes to real estate transactions that kill deals, and sometimes the home's awesome, functionality is great, location's great. I've run into problems, really big problems when it comes to like the wood structures. So when you have cedar siding, cedar decking, that type of thing, and it just hasn't been well upkept and there's no paint on it, and then the dry rot sets in. I've had some really, really big challenges selling those properties because, wood, especially right now, lumber, it's super expensive. And then it's some of the most highest quality stuff you can buy for replacement of siding, that type of thing. And if dry rot's happening, well, the siding's a pretty big deal on homes. And I see that often when it's cedar sided homes. And that's been something a seller understands that issue, but yet they still continue to live in the home with no interrupted issues when it comes to functionality and way of life. But what sellers sometimes don't understand is a buyer, they're investing in this home. They're putting sometimes all they have down on it. They have no money to spend for repairs. And that's the whole point of a repair addendum from a buyer. It's to protect them, right? And I've seen so many deals be killed because sellers don't necessarily want to negotiate repairs that are necessary, I believe, because to me, that's simple upkeep.
Right.
That's just home over the years. That's an obligation as an owner. You need to maintain your home if you want particular prices, especially. And in this case, a lot of sellers just don't want to do it or put in the work, and they also just don't even want to do a price reduction because of the type of market we're in. So they'll say, we'll find another buyer.
Right.
And that costs time, money, and sometimes there are market changes, and then people start to wonder, hey, what's wrong with this home? And it's at fault of the seller in reality because they don't want to do any repairs when repairs are necessary, and that's just upkeep of the home over a period of time of living there.
Right. And I do want to add, with all of this being said, for buyers, I don't want to discourage anyone from purchasing a certain type of real estate. Like, for example, say there's a house and, you've been looking for a little bit and there's a house that's on a flag lot and it's not a big deal to you. Like, you don't care that it's on a flag lot, but everything else fits perfect. So purchase the home. Like, I'm not saying that it's not going to sell in the future, or, if there's a shared wall or whatever, the situation is, right by a train track, busy road. Those are all certain things that, a lot of buyers don't want. Yeah. But if that's not a deal breaker for you, you could find a perfect home. It could be like a diamond in the rough that's perfect for you.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to gain equity. That doesn't mean that at all. All I'm saying is, for sellers, just make sure you take into account that you can't necessarily compare, the home with the shared wall. It's not going to comp out for exactly the same home that's the same square footage, but doesn't have one. You need to be comparing it to other homes that also have shared walls that have recently sold. Same with like the flag lot situation. You need to be comparing it to other homes that are also on a flag lot, which is, not always easy to find. But
while we're on the topic of buyers as well, I do want to touch on, what type of opportunity we have right now representing buyers of ourselves. And we're in a cool market here because sellers are still getting money, how much money they want when their home's listed. But ultimately, buyers take advantage of the homes that are maybe sitting a little bit longer to negotiate with if those homes kind of fit your needs. And we just had a really cool success story with a set of our clients that are out of state. We're actually performing an inspection sometime this week for them. We got them under contract just last week on a home that it's gorgeous, got square footage, great side of town.
Great neighborhood.
It's got parking. I mean, it's not a flag lot or anything. And they simply did the right things. They trusted, and look at now, they're under contract. So there's lots of things to be doing when it comes to negotiations for buyers right now. And I want to encourage you guys, don't feel like it's the same market it was 2, 5, 8 months ago, because we are in a little transition period, especially here in the Mid-Willamette Valley. When we call the brokers and say, hey, what's going on? Like, why is there so many price reductions? Or after 12 days, why is it still on market?
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy. That's bogus. But in the end, I mean, it's a reality.
I know. Why is 12 days on market a red flag?
And it's a fault of the sellers, though, for becoming more impatient over, $5,000. Generally, you send them an offer $5,000 under or $5,000 in closings, and it's been sitting that long, they're probably going to take it rather than sitting and being a little bit more patient. But that's the seller side. The buyers, let's take advantage of that and try to negotiate best for you. Not every circumstance is like that. There are still multiple homes with multiple offers, and that is something to consider because every property is different, in particular in its own self. And people want homes still. It's still very competitive. We're still at a very low inventory rate. But right now, to be a buyer, I think is really exciting. And there's hearsay of a slight decrease in interest rates, which is fabulous, and our oil prices are going down. So the economy, I think, kind of makes some type of shift to stabilize some type of inflation that's been happening over the last few years.